I'm reading some stuff. Detective Paveclef and the case of the unwillingly infamous. Detective Paveclef sat in his office, staring at a napkin, a single crumpled, slightly ketchup-stained napkin. Is that blood? Oh, no, it's ketchup. He tasted it, just to make sure. It was an important napkin, not because of what was written on it. A phone number, a cryptic message, or something equally detective-y. No, it was important because it had arrived via carrier pigeon inside a shoebox, delivered by a man wearing 3 pairs of sunglasses, which was, of course, a completely normal and rational way to receive a client. The napkin had one phrase written on it in hastily scrawled eyeliner. I need your help. Please come immediately. Also, bring snacks. There was an address and a name. Celestina Vox. Paveclef whistled under his breath. The Celestina Vox. The international pop sensation, beloved actress, and world-class starlet, known for both her soaring soprano and her absolutely unhinged feud with the paparazzi, which had, on more than one occasion, resulted in the mysterious destruction of several expensive camera lenses, and, once, an entire gondola in Venice. So, naturally, he took his time. First, he stopped at the corner store and purchased a bag of assorted nuts, a questionable energy drink, and, because the napkin had suggested it, a single small wedge of Gouda. He wasn't sure why. But when the spirit of the case spoke, he listened. Then, and only then, did he make his way to the Grand Hotel where Celestina was currently hiding from the world. The moment the elevator doors opened, she was there, a vision in oversized sunglasses, a wildly luxurious robe. Was it velvet? It was probably velvet, and a general air of someone who had seen too much and trusted too little. Oh, thank God, she breathed, grabbing his sleeve and yanking him into the room. Close the door, quickly, quickly. Dave Claff, who operated exclusively on his own time, took exactly 2.5 leisurely seconds before shutting the door. Detective Paycliffe, she whispered, gripping his shoulders as though she were about to either shake him or knight him. You are the only man I can trust. He nodded gravely. This is an unfortunate trait of mine. She released him, pacing. They're after me. The media, the vultures. But it's not just them. There's more. Something deeper. I've been set up. He squinted. For? She spun dramatically. Crime. Ah, a crime I did not commit. Oh, and he did it. She pointed to a framed photo sitting on a coffee table. A man all perfect teeth and slicked back charm. The kind of face that looked like it came with a pre-installed setting for fake sincerity. Paveclef tilted his head. The framed photo was oddly large, suspiciously large, almost as though the man himself had once deemed it necessary to be the most important item in the room. Celestina, noticing his look, scowled. He put it there, said it would help remind me of what to be grateful for. She made a vaguely murderous gesture. I hate it, but I keep it there. It reminds me of what I'm dealing with. Heathcliff stared at the photo, stared at the man, stared. It was a stare that said, I am better than you, and I will also sue you. Interesting. What's his name? Celestina folded her arms. Maxwell Durnbridge. Paveclef made a non-committal noise. A Dern Bridge. The name itself reeked of casual villainy. The kind of man who probably described himself as a self-made success, while conveniently forgetting the part where his father owned 3 oil rigs and a private island. And, Paveclef said, already exhausted, what crime exactly have you been set up for? She threw herself onto the couch with the kind of exhaustion only celebrities and house cats can truly master. Something ridiculous. A pause. A jewelry heist. He blinked. I see. Oh, do you? She snapped. Because I don't. She gestured wildly. I am a singer. I am an actress. I am not a jewel thief. And yet, somehow, the cameras all showed me sneaking into a high-end boutique in a hoodie and heels and sneaking off with exactly $2 million worth of diamonds. He narrowed his eyes. A hoodie and heels. That's what I said. Paveclef rubbed his chin. An odd choice for a heist. Exactly. And even worse, she sat up, her sunglasses slipping slightly, revealing the eyes of a woman who had not slept in 3 days. I was at a charity gala that night with 100 witnesses. He nodded solemnly. A peculiar case indeed, and one that already reeked of a certain someone's carefully orchestrated nonsense. Still, he needed more information, more details, more cheese, perhaps. So he did what any good detective would do. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the wedge of Gouda, and took a thoughtful bite. Celestina blinked. Did you just? I need to think, he said, chewing contemplatively. The cheese helps. She stared at him. Then, ever so slightly, her lips twitched. For the first time in days, Celestina Vox felt something that could almost be considered hope. Yes, this was it. Paveclef was a strange man, an infuriating man, but if anyone could untangle this ridiculous mess, it was him. Paveclef sat down and leaned back on the luxurious couch, letting the cheese do its work. The cheese, you see, was not merely a snack. It was an instrument of cognition, a finely aged dairy oracle, whispering secrets of reality straight into his brain. Some detectives needed magnifying glasses, others needed notebooks. He needed cheese. Celestina watched him in silence, perhaps questioning her life choices, or perhaps questioning why he was currently holding the Gouda up to the light like a jeweler inspecting a diamond. At last, he nodded, lowering the cheese with the solemnity of a man who had just had a vision. Celestina Vox, he said, gravely. I believe you. She exhaled. Oh, thank God. But heavenly. I mean, getting mixed up. This heist is not just a heist. It is something much, much worse. She paled. What? It is. He paused dramatically. She leaned forward. A bad plan. She blinked. What? A terrible plan, Celestina. He gestured vaguely, as if drawing a crime scene in the air. The hoodie, the heels, the security cameras conveniently catching just enough to create doubt, but not enough to make it clear. A public figure, easily recognizable. Committing a crime badly? No, 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 no. He shook his head. This reeks of a man who believes himself too clever. I've seen this before. Celestina narrowed her eyes. Durnbridge. Yes, Paveclef said, squinting slightly at the painting. That name, it carries an air of smugness, a hint of generational wealth. A man who probably wears turtlenecks in the summer and describes his own reflection as powerful. Celestina snorted. He actually does wear turtlenecks in the summer. Exactly. He gestured vaguely at nothing in particular. A man like that, he believes himself untouchable. A man like that makes plans. And a man like that makes bad plans. But convinces himself they are brilliant. Celestina sat back, frowning. So, what do we do? Paveclef reached into his pocket, pulled out a different piece of cheese, a sharp cheddar this time, a thinking cheddar. He took a slow bite. Then, finally, he said, "We must deconstruct the crime." She blinked. "How?" He stood suddenly, the motion abrupt, almost prophetic. "We go," he declared, "to a department store." "Why?" He turned to her, his coat billowing slightly despite the lack of any visible breeze. "Because, Celestina," he said, eyes gleaming with an unknowable madness, "if I were a man trying to frame a woman I once dated, where would I go first?" She hesitated. "A department store?" "No," he said, "but I do need new socks." Celestina groaned. This was going to be a long day. The department store was an overwhelming monstrosity of fluorescent lighting, canned music, and the faint yet unmistakable scent of discounted cologne. Clive stepped inside, his hands in his coat pockets, eyes darting to and fro like a feral raccoon let loose in a jewelry display. Celestina trailed behind him, still trying to figure out why they were here, and still not entirely sure he knew either. He stopped abruptly in the middle of the aisle, causing an elderly get mixed up. "Yes," he murmured to himself, surveying the scene. "Yes, this is exactly the kind of place where an insufferable man planted a clue." Celestina crossed her arms. "I failed to see how." He whirled to her. "Tell me, Celestina Vox, have you ever known a narcissist?" She raised an eyebrow. "I dated one." "Exactly." He leaned in, eyes gleaming. "And do you know what men like that love? Do you know what they thrive on?" She tilted her head. "Manipulation?" "Well, yes, but do you know what else?" She thought for a moment. The sound of their own voice?" "Correct again." He spun on his heels, striding purposefully toward a display of mismatched lawn chairs. "And so, my dear Celestina, if your former narcissist turned accuser did set you up, he has already left something behind, something critical, something undeniable." She sighed. "Which is?" He turned dramatically, holding up a single, perfectly folded bath towel. "His own stupidity." Celestina stared at the towel, stared at him, stared back at the towel. "That's a towel." "Ah," he said, nodding. "But is it?" "Yes, yes," he agreed. "But is it?" She pinched the bridge of her nose. "I am questioning every decision that has led me to this moment." But Paveclef was undeterred. He held the towel up to the light, sniffed it, nodded sagely, then, without explanation, threw it over his shoulder and marched toward the men's accessories section. Celestina followed, half out of curiosity, half out of exhaustion. There, standing between the leather belts and a rack of aggressively neutral-colored socks, was a man in a department store uniform, a man who, for some reason, was holding a single shoe. Paveclad pointed directly at him. You! The man flinched. Me? Yes, you. Paveclad strode up, looming over him in a way that suggested both intense authority and complete nonsense. Tell me, sir, have you seen anything? The man blinked. Uh, yeah. I mean, I work here. I see a lot of things. Paveclad narrowed his eyes. No, not things. Not people. Not shoes. He paused. Well, maybe shoes, but that's beside the point. He leaned in. I'm talking about him. Him? Yes. Paveclad's voice dropped into an ominous whisper. A man. A man who thinks he is a very, very clever man. A man who in reality is not. The employee blinked again. Uh, Celestina sighed. We're looking for Maxwell Durnbridge. The man's face lit up. Oh, the guy with the turtleneck. Paveclad and Celestina exchanged glances. Paveclad nodded. Turtleneck in summer? Yeah. The employee grinned. Yeah, yeah. He came in here the other day. Kept talking to himself about how foolproof his plan was. It was weird. Paveclad smirked. Of course he had. Because, at the end of the day, a man like Maxwell Durnbridge simply could not resist the sound of his own voice. He had likely stood right here among the socks and the wallets, gloating to himself, secure in the belief that he was untouchable. And in doing so, he had made a fatal mistake. Paveclad took a slow, thoughtful bite of cheddar. Then, with all the gravitas of a man who had just uncovered the key to a great mystery, he nodded. Celestina, he said solemnly, we're going to need a shopping cart. She stared at him. For what? He met her gaze, eyes burning with inexplicable conviction. For justice. Armed with a shopping cart and absolutely no clear plan, Paveclad marched onward, weaving through the store with the conviction of a man who had just discovered the meaning of life and forgotten it immediately afterward. Celestina followed because, at this point, what else was she supposed to do? The laws of nature dictated that once you had started following Paveclad, you could not stop. Like a black hole of absurdity, it pulled people into its orbit and refused to let go. Tell me, Celestina, Paveclad said, pushing the cart as if it were a mighty chariot of truth. What do you know? The law of idiotic inertia. She pinched the bridge of her nose. That's not a thing, he gasped. Not a thing? Not a thing? He whirled dramatically, nearly knocking over a display of decorative soap. Celestina, my dear, my dearest, it is the thing, the most thing. A passing grandmother eyed them warily. Celestina sighed. Fine. What is the law of idiotic inertia? Paveclad smirked. It is simple. When a fool begins rolling downhill, he cannot stop. He does not reconsider. He does not course correct. No, no. He simply accelerates. Celestina blinked. And you're saying this applies to Durnbridge? Oh, absolutely. He steered the cart into the frozen foods aisle, spinning it in an unnecessary yet oddly graceful maneuver. Our dear Maxwell, the ever smug, the perpetually turtle-necked, has already set himself in motion. He cannot help but keep going. His own delusions have momentum. Celestina tilted her head. So all we have to do is wait for him to out himself? Oh, no, 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 no. Haveclef grabbed a frozen waffle box, inspected it, as if it contained a hidden message from the universe, then put it back upside down. We help him along. Celestina frowned. And how do we do that? Haveclef stopped, turned slowly, fixed her with a look so intense, so filled with ridiculous purpose, that she almost took a step back. Then, in a voice dripping with solemnity, he whispered, "We buy a blender." She blinked. I, what? But he was already off, shoving the shopping cart forward with the determination of a man headed to war. They reached the home appliance section, where Paveglav immediately grabbed the biggest, most absurdly industrial blender he could find. It was the kind of blender that looked like it could survive an apocalypse. And puree, car batteries. Celestina stared at it. Paveglav, why? He raised a single finger. Shh. She shut her mouth. He lifted the blender, set it in the cart, smoothed his coat. Then, as if everything now made perfect sense, he said, "Now we wait." And with that, he marched toward the checkout. Celestina followed, not because she understood, but because at this point, trying to understand was futile. Minutes later, they stood outside the store, Paveclef cradling the blender like it was a newborn child. And then, "Hey!" A voice rang out across the parking lot. They turned, and there, standing in the sweltering heat, in a thick black turtleneck, was Maxwell Durnbridge himself, his eyes locked on the blender, his face twisted in fury. "What the hell are you doing with that?" Celestina blinked. "Wait, what?" But Paveclef just smirked, because, of course, Maxwell Durnbridge would have an irrational, furious, completely incriminating reaction to an appliance. Because when a fool is rolling downhill, he cannot stop. Maxwell Durnbridge stood there, sweating bullets in his summer turtleneck, eyes darting wildly between Paveclef and the blender. His entire body radiated an energy that could only be described as a man standing on the precipice of his own doom, but too stupid to realize it just yet. Paveclef tilted his head, watching him like an intrigued crow. "Ah, Maxwell, so nice of you to join us." Maxwell pointed at the blender. "Why the hell do you have that?" Paveclef stroked the appliance's side as if it were a prize-winning show horse. "This?" He tapped the lid. "Just a humble tool of truth, a whirring vortex of revelation, a beacon of justice, if you will." Maxwell's eye twitched. "That's a blender." "Is it?" "Yes." Hmm. Paveclef steepled his fingers. "Interesting that you think so." Maxwell opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. His brain cells were visibly overheating. Celestina pinched the bridge of her nose. "Paveclef, please." But Paveclef did not please. Instead, He took a slow, meaningful step forward, never breaking eye contact with Maxwell. I have found, he mused, that those who fear the blender, Maxwell, often have something to hide. Maxwell let out a laugh that was just a little too loud, a little too panicked. That's ridiculous. It's an appliance. Paveclef narrowed his eyes. Is it? Maxwell groaned. For God's sakes, yes. Paveclef gasped. So defensive. He turned to Celestina. Why is he so defensive? Celestina threw her hands up. I don't know, Paveclef. Why is he? Maxwell threw his arms up. Because this is stupid. And then, in his fit of rage, he shoved his hands into his pockets and immediately paled. Paveclef smirked. Could have legally been classified as a war crime. Ah, something troubling you? Maxwell gulped. Slowly, painfully, he pulled his hand from his pocket, and there, clutched in his trembling fingers, was a small, black voice recorder. It was on. His pupils shrank. He pressed a button. Immediately, his own voice crackled out of the speaker. Is it dignified to relieve myself in a superstar's bathroom? It is a very nice bathroom. No, no, Maxwell, stay focused. You must plant the evidence, but not too obviously. But also obviously enough that she. Wait, no, that's too obvious. Maxwell, you fool. Think, think. A silence fell over the parking lot so profound it could have cured tinnitus. Maxwell stood there, frozen in place, as his own voice continued ranting about his crime. Celestina's mouth fell open. Paveclef slowly turned his gaze to her, smiling ever so slightly. Well, he said simply, would you look at that? Maxwell made a noise like a deflating tire and bolted. It was a valiant attempt at an escape, but unfortunately for him, fate had other plans. Because just as he took his first step, he hit a pile of discarded sunflower seed husks right in the middle of the road, slippery, treacherous, and inexplicably glowing in the sunset like a celestial trap set by the gods themselves. He went airborne. Time slowed. Somewhere, a distant opera singer hit a high note, and then Maxwell Durnbridge, the great, the smug, the utterly doomed, crashed directly into a shopping cart full of discount soup, sending cans everywhere. By the time the cops arrived, Maxwell was unconscious under a tower of split pea and tomato bisque. Celestina stared. People began to cheer. A man in a trucker hat yelled, "The day is saved!" Paveclef folded his arms, nodding in deep satisfaction. Yes, yes, it is. Celestina turned to him, still in stunned disbelief. How? How did you do that? Paveclef exhaled. Eyes on the horizon. I have no idea. Celestina shook her head. I'm never asking you for help again. But there was a smile in her voice. And later, when the police had dragged Maxwell off, when the night was settling in, and the department store lights flickered in the distance, she handed him a single, glorious block of 10-year aged cheddar. Paveclef took it solemnly, reverently. It's so sharp, he murmured. It burns. Yes, she said. Yes, it does. He exhaled deeply. And in that moment, standing in a parking lot littered with sunflower husks and soup cans. Paveclef was at peace. The end. Let's see here. Fruity poodles. Oh, hey, babe. Oh, it's that guy. Silent sister. Hey, T. Oh, a gifter badge. Jesslyn. Lulu. Sherry. Joker. Jez. Nicole. Julian. Just him. Chewy Waffles 007. Um, well, I got 14% battery left. Oh, 24%. In that case, I'm going to read the first episode of Roderick. Roderick Pumpernickel. Yes, we're good. The name's Roderick. Roderick Pumpernickel. It wasn't a joke. Well, not entirely. To some, it sounded like an alias chosen by a man in desperate need of a second chance at life. To others, it carried the air of aristocratic absurdity, as if he had waltzed out of a century-old novel smelling of aged brandy and misplaced confidence. To him, it was Tuesday. Roderick Pumpernickel strolled to the opulent ball of the Sable Mirage Casino, wearing a black tuxedo tailored to irritation-inducing perfection. A glass of something expensive in his left hand, and the faintest smirk gracing his lips. He didn't smirk because he was pleased. He smirked because it made people wonder what they had missed. Across the room, a man was sweating bullets, probably because Roderick had relieved him of a silver keycard to a vault containing the kind of secrets that made governments nervous. The poor fool hadn't even noticed. Not until Roderick had flashed him a dazzling grin and a knowing wink before turning on his heel and disappearing into the crowd. That was his way. No running, no shouting, no need for violence unless absolutely, hilariously necessary. Some spies relied on brute force, others on complex technology. Roderick, he relied on the overwhelming power of audacity. As he stepped toward the exit, a broad-shouldered security enforcer in an ill-fitting suit cut in his path. The man glared down at him, his arms crossed, a vague sense of irritation radiating from his forehead. "Sir," the enforcer grumbled, "we need to have a word." Roderick sighed. Ah, swirled his drink, tilted his head in thought. You look like a Gregory, he mused, eyeing the man up and down. Or perhaps a Winston. Either way, I can already tell you have a rich internal world, one unappreciated by your superiors. Let me guess, you wanted to be an artist, but the family business called? The enforcer blinked. His lips twitched. Just a little. Sir, I need you to come with me. Roderick exhaled dramatically. Set his drink down on a passing tray, and buttoned his jacket to eat with the ease of a man who had never lost a game of poker in his life. Of course, he said smoothly, stepping forward, and right past the enforcer, patting the man's shoulder as he went. By the time the brute realized what had happened, Roderick was already gone, vanishing into the velvet curtained halls of the casino, with the kind of effortless charm that made people whisper his name in both admiration and frustration. Roderick Pumpernickel was on the move, and somewhere, in some dimly lit boardroom, someone was about to realize they had already lost. The Pumpernickel Gambit. Somewhere between the bar and the vault, Roderick Pumpernickel had acquired a martini. He wasn't quite sure how. Perhaps it had been handed to him. Perhaps he had manifested it through sheer force of personality. Either way, it was there now, swirling in his hand, existing with the same effortless confidence that he did. He took a sip. It was adequate. The hall leading to the vault was guarded by two men in matching suits, the kind of suits that were expensive, but not flattering, tailored with the precision of a blindfolded butcher. They stood with their hands clasped in front of them, projecting the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that suggested they had both been hired for their ability to frown very hard at things. Roderick approached, adjusting his cufflinks with the air of a man who had already won the argument they were about to have. Gentlemen, he greeted, nodding politely. Wonderful evening for some light treason, wouldn't you say? The guards did not respond. This was disappointing, but not unexpected. One of them, a particularly square-headed individual, shifted slightly. No one's allowed past this point without clearance. Clearance? Roger arched a brow. Oh, I assure you, I have all the clearance in the world. Just ask Gregory or Winston out at, out at the front. Lovely man. Dreamed of being an artist. Heartbreaking, really. The guards did not react. Roderick sighed, then reached into his jacket and produced the silver key card he had so graciously borrowed earlier. He held it up between two fingers, letting it catch the light. I believe this should suffice, he suggested. The guard squinted, not in suspicion, but in the kind of deep soul-searching effort required when two men who have dedicated their entire lives to standing in front of doors must now confront an unprecedented situation requiring thought. The square-headed one glanced at his counterpart. Did anyone say someone else was coming? The other, a man who had all the alertness of a deflated beanbag chair, furrowed his brows. I don't know. Maybe. Roger clapped his hands. Excellent. We're all in agreement then. I'll just see myself in. And before either of them could protest, he stepped forward, past them, through the vault doors, and into the heart of the casino secrets. The two guards stared after him. Squarehead blinked. Was that allowed? The beanbag of security let out a slow breath. I mean, he had a key. A pause. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. And with that, they returned to their noble duty of standing very still in front of a door, completely unaware that the greatest spy that they had ever encountered had just outmaneuvered them using nothing but confidence, absurdity, and the sheer weight of their own incompetence. Somewhere inside the vault, Roderick Pumpernickel adjusted his tie, glanced at the heavily fortified security systems, and took another sip of his martini. He had no idea what he was stealing, but he was absolutely going to steal it. Operation Unnecessarily Theatrical. The vault was a monument to overcompensation, lined with steel reinforced walls, blinking security cameras, and lasers crisscrossing like an avant garde art installation. It screamed, "Look how impenetrable I am!" Which, of course, only made it all the more embarrassing that Roderick Pumpernickel was already inside, adjusting his cufflinks and casually sipping his martini. The prize, whatever it was, sat in the center of the room atop a pedestal encased in glass, because of course it was. The people who built this vault weren't just protecting something, they were making a statement. Unfortunately for them, the only statement Roderick ever listened to was his own. He walked toward it, unfazed by the lasers. He didn't duck, he didn't roll, didn't do that unnecessarily athletic thing where spies contort themselves through security grids like a drunken game of Twister. No, that would require effort, and Roderick Pumpernickel was morally opposed to effort. Instead, he simply stepped through the lasers. They, in turn, did absolutely nothing because, of course, he had turned them off already. How? Well, that was the beauty of it. He had no idea. Somewhere between acquiring a martini and humiliating two guards via passive conversation, he had pressed a button, flipped a switch, or perhaps just willed it into existence through sheer force of personality. It didn't matter. The important thing was that it worked, and now he stood before the object of someone else's deepest desires. Inside the glass case set of black velvet box, Roderick arched a brow, setting down his drink atop a randomly important looking control panel with because consequences were for other people. He lifted the glass case, expecting an alarm to blare. Nothing. He frowned, disappointed. Not even a challenge. With a sigh, he flipped open the velvet box, expecting to find a diamond, a top secret document, a USB drive full of national secrets. Instead, he found a rubber chicken. A single rubber chicken nestled in velvet, looking up at him with the deeply unsettling blank stare of something that had no business being this well guarded. Roderick tilted his head. He closed the box, opened it again. Still the chicken. He considered this deeply, as deeply as a man with a half drunk martini and a borderline pathological aversion to taking things seriously could. And then, because ultimately he was not paid to ask questions, he simply picked up the box, tucked it under his arm, and turned on his heel. Exit stage left. By the time the casino realized they had been robbed, Roderick was already sitting at the bar of a seedy lounge in Budapest, nursing a drink and contemplating whether or not he should ask why an entire underground operation had been protecting a rubber chicken. He decided against it. Not my monkey, not my show, he said. Because at the end of the day, Roderick Pumpernickel wasn't a man who needed answers. He was a man who made other people question everything. Yes, Pumpernickel forever. Budapest was exactly his as he remembered it, which was remarkable, considering he had no memory of ever being here before. The lounge smelled of old wood, regret, and the kind of jazz that only plays when someone is about to make a terrible decision. A red light flickered in the corner, giving the whole place the aesthetic of a noir film that had been left out in the sun too long. Roderick Pumpernickel sat at the bar, with the velvet box beside him and a fresh martini in hand, because, despite what the skeptics said, the world always had a fresh martini waiting for a man who walked like he belonged there. The bartender was a woman of indeterminate age and infinite disinterest. She had the weary expression of someone who had seen everything and was unimpressed by all of it. Her name tag read Olga, which felt right. Olga wiped a glass and gave him a glance that could charbroil a lesser man. You want something? Or are you just here to make the air worse? Roderick took a sip of his drink, savoring it, like a man who wasn't entirely sure if it was poisoned, but was committed to the experience anyway.
With romance, betrayal, and, if possible, mild explosions.
My earbuds went silent. And then I was sitting in the tub with no story other than that which happened to be coming out of my mouth was told. And that's how the story went. For exactly 5 seconds before he thought of something else to say. What you doing there?
Lots of silent sister likes. Lots of people looking. Hello, looking people. Evelyn. Laura Tareed. Hart. Somebody named Hart joined. What's the subject question? I didn't know I asked anything. Modsy Voxenth. Whoa. 25-year-old musician who works with modular synth and vocal synth. Lovely. Leo Carmonia. Miss Shishi. Brianna. Crafty. You know, sometimes, well, at least one time, somebody asked me, "Are you Trevor from Grand Theft Auto?" Which was interesting because I love that character. I think I'd do more damage making people just question everything about their life. And then they carry that feeling to their friends and family, and then they question their lives too. I think it makes the world a better place.